Today's lecture is on qualitative research. After this lecture, you should be able to explain why researchers collect qualitative data and write the method section of qualitative research. So when we talk about qualitative research, the research designs that we are talking about are very likely to be exploratory research design and descriptive research design. And today we focus on qualitative data. Exploratory research design is used when the phenomenon has not been well studied and the variables are not clear. But descriptive research designs, we have clearer idea of what variables we wish to study about the people or the text. Quantitative data versus qualitative data. Look at the green box here. How do you feel about the loss of face-to-face contact with your lecturers and classmates during online teaching? Happy? Sad? Don't feel anything? Versus the blue box. How do you feel about the loss of face-to-face contact with your lecturers and classmates during online teaching? So on the left-hand side, the green box, these are the usual questions asked in questionnaires. The blue one on the right-hand side is more like interview questions using open-ended questions. So in the questionnaire, very often the researcher imposes their thinking on the topic or on the items. They suggest to the participants, you either feel happy, sad, or don't feel anything. Through this method, we can't really find out what the participants really think or feel. But if you ask an open-ended question like this here in the blue, it's very likely the participants can talk about their experiences. They are free to do so, and they may not talk about whether they're happy, sad, or other things. They could talk about other feelings and experiences. So there is advantage to collecting qualitative data because it helps us to understand the participants better, their version of reality, their version of the world. Why do researchers collect qualitative data? To gain a deep understanding of a specific group, organization, or event, rather than a surface description of a large sample of a population. It aims to provide an explicit rendering of the structure, order, and broad patterns found among the group. And it also allows meaning to emerge from the participants because researchers do not introduce treatments or manipulate variables or impose their operational definitions of variables on the participants. So in the process, when we collect qualitative data, we can get a better understanding of how participants derive meaning from their surroundings and how the meaning influences their behavior. In short, it helps us to understand our participants' version of reality better. So put simply, researchers conduct qualitative research in order to understand a topic or phenomenon from the participant's perspective. This is called understanding meaning in context. That is, we want to know how the participants experience, feel, or think about something in the natural environment. So a qualitative researcher has to be interested in the participants, not just using them to collect data. Because if we have the right attitude, we want to understand how they think or feel or experience certain events, we are on the way to we are on the way to be able to extract their meaning or their understanding of things. Example of qualitative research. How graduates talk to their new boss. We don't know. People don't really study this or don't record what happens. Or don't ask new graduates how they feel on the first day in the first month of their work. Question, which is the most suitable instrument to collect data on how students feel about seeing lecturers in their office? A, questionnaire, B, interview, C, test. I would say B, because students all have different experiences. Another question, when researchers ask scam victims how they feel after they have transferred money to a stranger, whose perspective is being studied? We interview scam victims, so it has to be B. No, sorry, D, the scam victim's perspective. Next part. You already know why researchers collect qualitative data, which is to understand meaning in context, as experienced by the participants. Now, how to write the method section for a qualitative descriptive study. The method section for a qualitative descriptive study will contain these 6 sections. 3.1, research design. 3.2, participants or text. 3.3, instruments. 3.4, data collection procedures. 3.5, data analysis procedures. 3.6, limitations of the study. So 3.1, descriptive research design. Just a reminder, it is a research that describes characteristics of a particular individual, situation, or group. So if you want to describe characteristics, then you are choosing a descriptive research design. We are not into predicting cause and effect because we do not control any variable in the study. We just describe variables or characteristics about the group, and that's what a descriptive research design is. This is an example here. First, we state the research design. 3.1, research design. In this study, a descriptive research design was selected to collect qualitative data on how graduates talk with the boss in the new workplace. Next, we cite researchers to justify the choice of research design. This is very important, the reason why we chose descriptive research design. A descriptive research design was chosen in order to describe the graduate's perspective of how their new work experience, the graduate's perspective of their new work experience, particularly how and why they think and behave in certain ways in their natural environment. And it continues with a citation from McCombs 2019 on why descriptive research design is suitable to identify characteristics. Next, 3.2, you describe the people or text. You can call them participants or text. You answer the WH questions. Example, the study on how graduates talk with their boss in a new workplace involved 20 UNIMAS graduates who started working in the last 6 months. They might have graduated a few years earlier, but had recently started working. Now, this selection criteria is important so that experiences of being in a new workplace is fresh in their mind when they are interviewed. So this is my justification for the selection criteria. And I tell the readers also that the participants were from all over Malaysia and working in various parts of Malaysia, maybe in different industries. So the selection criteria is quite open, except the fact that they must start working in the last 6 months. Now, more on this, participants or text. Here, there is no random sampling being used. You can use that stratified sampling if you wish, if you are interested in certain variables. For example, you want to make sure that enough males and females in the among the participants, enough of ethnic groups in the participant list, you can do stratified sampling. But if not, you can choose purposive sampling to study people with certain characteristics that are important in your study. But make sure your selection criteria is clear and you can offer a good rationale for it. It is okay to use purposive sampling. We move on to 3.3, instrument. State the instrument. A self-constructed semi-structured interview guide. This is the instrument. Give the contents. You can see 10 questions here. Say whether it is adapted from somebody or new. Here, it is new, self-constructed. But if you took it from somebody and changed something, tell readers who you adapt it from. Citation is important so that there is no plagiarism. Question for you. Which is a bad interview question? Explain why. A, do you like talking to your boss in his or her office? B, can you tell me how you feel about talking to your boss in his or her office? Bad question is A, because it's closed. Do you like? Yes, no, end of story. Interview is meant to understand the participant's perspective, so we want them to talk, and you need an open question. Tell me how you feel about such and such. Here is an example of interview questions that is put in a journal paper that I have written. An interview guide was formulated with reference to Gilliland 2006, that means adapted from Gilliland 2006 to determine the participants' language use and criteria for being Fuchao or Hokkien. The questions are 1 and 2 with the sub-questions. We move on to 3.4, data collection procedures. I take an example from my master's student. Remember, this is collecting the data. She was collecting journal articles for analysis. Collecting means finding things from out there. What did she do? 1, she looked for journals fulfilling selection criteria. And 2, after she found the journal, she looked for articles inside them on general topics. But what she meant was public policy that doesn't require specialized knowledge to understand. She scanned through the topics. What did she do? The relevant ones, she downloaded them from the journal website. At least you can picture what she did to collect her corpus for analysis. This is data collection. And there are some things to remember about these two. Talk about the ethics. You need to write about this, that you have informed participants of the purpose of the study, confidentiality of responses, and the fact that you ask them if they would like to participate in the study and you have obtained their consent before you started data collection. It is important to include this in the data collection procedure section. Also, it is important to announce that you have asked for the permission to record the interview. And for qualitative data, it is important to get a recording because we want the exact words to describe their perspective of events or experiences. We need to offer a rich description. But if they don't give permission to record, that's when you need to use your note-taking skills. For me, I will always take notes as a backup just in case the recording instrument fails. And also there are contextual information around about the surroundings that I want to take note of, or even the facial expressions and the animatedness when they talk about certain topics. It is important. And data collection, another point lastly, must follow the interview guide when asking questions and listen attentively. Wait until they finish talking before you ask the next question. Be interested in what they have to say. Be interested in their experiences and ideas. And if they're not talking, then ask prompting questions. But those prompt questions have to be prepared beforehand so that we ask the questions in the same way to every participant. That's why we need to do pilot tests on the questions to see whether they work or not, whether they can get participants to talk about their experiences. So it is important to get their experiences and feelings in depth and detail. Question for you. When reporting what participants say during interviews, you should A, use direct quotations of the participants' words, or B, paraphrase. Note, I have put down there importance of authentic data. So by all means, use direct quotations, but it doesn't mean you dump all your raw transcript inside there. You choose those that illustrate your points, and you choose as many as is required to illustrate your points that you have found from the results. Do not have a systematic way like this. Oh, I will use 2 all the time. No, sometimes 1 is enough because everybody talks about that 1 point in the same way. But sometimes for the second point, maybe there are 3 or 4 different ways how they experience it. Then maybe there is a need for 3 to 4 quotations. Importance of authentic data, just remember that. And I have given you an example from my student here, Myra Ungao. She offered the definitions you see in the black box here. This is earlier, but when she wrote her data analysis procedures, she announced that the analysis framework for the content of the health communication messages was based on WITS 1992 EPPM. And how did she analyze it? Words and phrases that show the effects and symptoms were put under severity. Words and phrases that point out risk factors as well as probabilities of a person to be affected by the disease were categorized as susceptibility. And information on prevention and treatments were identified as recommended actions. So at least you know how she analyzed these 3 kinds of information. Question for you. Can you use numbers like percentage to report the results after analyzing the qualitative data? Yes, you can. Doesn't mean that qualitative analysis, you cannot use numbers at all. You can use numbers and percentages to report qualitative data, and actually they are important to show the extent to which something occurs. Is it only one person, or is it 15 out of 20 persons? It is important to have an idea of how prevalent certain thoughts are. But we are not talking about inferential statistics here like t-test and ANOVA. We're just talking about using numbers like average, maybe, no average, just numbers and percentage. Remember the purpose of qualitative research, and that is to understand the situations, events, experiences from the participants' perspective, and to report using rich descriptions, because we want to understand reality from their perspective, their meanings in context. Finally, 3.6 limitations of the study. This is an example taken from another master student, Kirsty Fung. She talked about limitations of her study after she had finished the study. So therefore, it is more specific. I just give you one. Firstly, the research limited itself to only Malaysian millennials. In a cultural and geographical sense, this is only a study focusing on one particular age group that have the national culture as a common trait. It also limits the studying of other social groups from the same country. Elements from other groups that differ in social or cultural context may provide a different set of findings. Although there is no denying that millennials are the largest group of internet users nowadays, there are also new emerging groups of users who come from different age groups, such as the post-millennial generation Z and the older generation of people, etc., etc. And she went on with other limitations, but not too many, just important ones, because she realized that what she studied is only applicable to Malaysian millennials, because this was her selection criteria. So finally, to conclude, remember the purpose of qualitative research is to get a better understanding of how participants derive meaning from their surroundings and how the meaning influences their behavior. Therefore, to help our readers understand the phenomenon from the participants' perspective, you need to describe what you did in the study and why you did so. This is just to sum up what I have told you here. Transparency of reporting is important for other researchers to be able to replicate the study.